I should have known Karen Whitmore was evil when she fined me for having excessively cheerful garden gnomes. But at the time, I thought, okay, she's just a little intense. I was wrong. Karen, the self-appointed dictator of the Oakwood Pines Homeowners Association, HOA, wasn't just intense. She was a power-hungry lunatic in a pastel sweater set. It all started when I moved into my new home in Oakwood Pines. The neighborhood was everything I'd dreamed of: tree-lined streets, spacious yards, and the kind of peace and quiet you could only find in a well-maintained suburb. I was thrilled. And for the first time, I thought maybe I could finally settle down and enjoy the suburban dream. But as soon as I arrived, I was introduced to the real power of Oakwood Pines: Karen Whitmore. Karen wasn't just the HOA president, she was the HOA. If she could, she'd probably own the street signs. At first, I thought she was just a little much. Everyone in the neighborhood had their own Karen story, but they all seemed like small grievances, small complaints about petty infractions. No one had the guts to stand up to her because everyone was afraid of what would happen if they did. But I wasn't afraid. Not yet, anyway. The first incident that made me raise an eyebrow was when she decided to wage war on my garden gnomes. They weren't even that obnoxious. Just a few colorful gnomes with exaggerated whimsical hats and beards scattered around the yard. I thought they added character. Apparently, Karen thought they added chaos. She sent me a letter, not just informing me of my infraction, but practically condemning me to hell for it. The letter had a tone that made it sound like I had committed an unforgivable sin. Excessively cheerful garden gnomes, it read, violate the HOA's aesthetic standards. I shrugged it off, thinking it was some overzealous attempt to maintain harmony in the neighborhood. But when the fine arrived in the mail a week later, I realized Karen meant business. The fine wasn't just for a minor infraction either. It was for $75 for garden gnomes. I attempted to negotiate with her, but Karen had her rules and she wasn't about to let me wiggle out of them. I tried reasoning with her, suggesting that a little whimsy never hurt anyone. But she told me in no uncertain terms that if I didn't remove the gnomes, the fine would increase. I had no choice but to take them down, but I made a vow that this wouldn't be the end of it. After the gnome incident, Karen's focus shifted, as if she was waiting for the next opportunity to strike. She began scrutinizing every aspect of my life with the laser focus of a hyper-vigilant suburban tyrant. The first target? My trash cans. Now, you might think that leaving your trash cans out for a few extra minutes after trash collection is no big deal, but in Oakwood Pines, this was a cardinal sin. Apparently, the acceptable window for trash cans being left on the curb was precisely between 7 a.m. and 7:05 a.m. If they were still there at 7:06 a.m., the HOA had every right to fine you. I thought this was the peak of ridiculousness, but I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole would go. One Saturday, after the trash had been picked up, I walked outside to grab the cans, only to find a slip of paper tucked under the lid. It was a notice detailing that I had violated the HOA trash regulations and would be fined $25. Karen had watched from behind her curtains, no doubt with a smug look on her face. Furious, I called her to ask for clarification, but all she said was, "Rules are rules, and the window for your trash cans is clearly outlined in the HOA handbook. If you want to keep living here, I suggest you start respecting the guidelines." I let out an exasperated sigh. What had I gotten myself into? Karen's next move was even more absurd. She set her sights on my front doormat. Now, anyone with basic home decor sense knows that you put a doormat by your front door to, well, welcome people into your home. It's the basic principle of hospitality. But apparently Karen had other ideas. I had purchased a simple doormat that said, welcome-ish. Not too in your face, not too casual. But Karen, of course, took issue with this. She sent me a complaint, along with a list of acceptable phrases for doormats, claiming my mat didn't meet the HOA's standards of greeting warmth. Welcome-ish, she said, is lukewarm, and thus does not adequately convey an inviting atmosphere. At that point, I was beyond frustrated. I tried to ignore it, but the next week, the fine came, a whopping $50 for my so-called unfriendly doormat. I had to go out and buy a new one that simply said, welcome. I rolled my eyes the entire time. This wasn't just about rules anymore. This was Karen trying to assert dominance. But what really pushed me over the edge was when Karen came after my house color. I'd painted my home a soft, neutral beige, a color that was subtle yet welcoming. But to Karen, it was the first major violation of the HOA's unofficial code, no color too warm. Apparently, my beige was 3% too warm, and this would disturb the overall balance of the neighborhood aesthetic. She sent me an email that outlined her concerns in excruciating detail, complete with links to a proper color palette that had been approved by the HOA board. And then she issued an ultimatum. I either repaint my house or face escalating fines. I couldn't believe it. This was a whole new level of crazy. Karen wasn't just messing with my garden gnomes anymore. She was now telling me how to paint my house. I wasn't sure how much more I could take. I had put up with Karen's ridiculous complaints for months, each one escalating in severity, each one making me feel more and more like a prisoner in my own home. But just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, came the generator incident. It all started with a storm. The wind picked up suddenly, and before I could grab my rain boots, the sky turned pitch black. The trees in our yard swayed dangerously, their branches cracking under the pressure. Within minutes, lightning was streaking across the sky like a cosmic battle, and the power went out. I wasn't too concerned. We had a gas-powered generator that was enough to keep the essentials running. We weren't looking for comfort. We just needed enough power to get by, keep the fridge cold and charge our phones. It wasn't a fancy setup, but it worked. As I sat down with a flashlight and a lukewarm soda trying to calm my nerves, I heard it. A shrill, blood-curdling scream. I rushed outside, heart pounding. Was someone in danger? Had a tree fallen on someone's house? But no, it was Karen, and she was standing in the middle of my yard, hands on her hips, her face flushed with rage. "Shut that down immediately," she screamed, pointing at my generator as if it were some kind of monstrous entity. I tried to remain calm. "Karen, this is just a generator. It's keeping food in the fridge and my mother's insulin cool." But Karen didn't want to hear it. She wasn't interested in my reasoning. "Generators are a violation of HOA regulations," she shrieked. "They disrupt the natural ambiance of the blackout and give certain homes an unfair power advantage." I was dumbfounded. "Karen, we're in a storm. People are without power. I'm just trying to get by." But she wasn't having it. "Shut it down," she demanded, her eyes wild, "or I'll report you to the HOA. You're breaking the rules." That's when Karen did the unthinkable. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. I stared at her in disbelief as she spoke breathlessly into the receiver. "Yes, officer," she gasped. "I need to report an illegal power source. It's disturbing the peace, promoting anarchy." I couldn't make this up if I tried. The police arrived about 20 minutes later. They took one look at Karen, one look at me, and immediately dismissed her. "Ma'am," one officer said, shaking his head, "this is not an emergency." Karen, fuming, huffed away, defeated for the moment. But this wasn't the end. At 3 a.m., I woke to a strange silence. The generator had stopped. I rushed outside, concerned that it had just run out of fuel. But when I checked, I noticed something strange. The fuel line had been cut. At first, I thought it was just a fluke. But then I reviewed the footage from my security cameras, and my stomach dropped. There, clearly visible in the dark, was Karen, in a floral nightgown, crouched down on my lawn, holding a pair of garden shears. She snipped the fuel line clean through, whispered, "Rules are rules," and then vanished into the night. I was livid. I immediately uploaded the footage to the neighborhood Facebook group, tagging everyone I could. The comments were instantaneous. "Karen, you absolute psycho. Is this a felony? This feels like a felony. HOA meeting, 8 a.m. This woman is done." The next morning, Karen's reign was over. She was impeached as HOA president, and a lawsuit for property damage was filed against her. But the best part? She was banned from the Facebook group forever. The power eventually came back for everyone in Oakwood Pines, but Karen's house? It stayed dark for 3 extra days. I don't know if it was karma or something else. Perhaps a subtle neighborhood conspiracy. But to this day, I can't help but smile every time I think about it. The woman who had tried to control every aspect of our lives, who had made life miserable for so many of us, was finally powerless. Literally. As for me, I never had to deal with her ridiculous rules again. The HOA got a makeover, and under new leadership, the neighborhood flourished. I even got to keep my garden gnomes. So, if you ever find yourself in a suburban HOA nightmare, remember, there's always a chance to take down the tyrants. Sometimes it takes a blackout, a few garden shears, and a whole lot of community support to finally show them that no one's invincible. And sometimes, the biggest victory isn't in following the rules. It's in making sure the rules don't make you. Suburbia had finally struck back. And Karen? She was powerless to stop it.